Welcome to this quick review video that I'm doing today. Today we're reviewing this, I believe it's called the Gamtoure Switch Controller. Now, I just got this thing yesterday and I think one day, really one evening with this thing was enough for me to want to do a review of it. Reason being, I really don't like it. Let's get into it. First things first, when you initially get it, you have to set it up. When I got mine, as anybody else would do, I immediately slid my switch onto the controller and I immediately saw this icon that said paired. And so I thought that was all I had to do was to slide my switch on it and see the paired sign and think that it'd be good to go. That is not the case. The setup for this was, I guess, kind of tricky at first. If you don't really know what you're doing, or if you never had a Pro controller before, or a wired Pro controller, any kind of wired controller hooked up to your Switch. I keep wanting to say deck, but the Switch can be a little tricky. You gotta find it in the menus. And setup for me was slightly tough because I didn't realize that this actually came with instructions. The paper that I saw in the box, I thought it was just paper going over the warranty. Didn't realize that I'd have to unfold it to get instructions to how to use this controller, but even still, the instructions weren't that great. So here are my instructions to getting your controller to work with your Switch. So to set this up, if it's not working, even if you saw that the paired icon popped up, you need to make sure that you go into the Switch settings, then you need to go to controllers and sensors, then to Pro controller wire communication, and make sure that that is turned on. That is how you get this controller to work with your Switch. Now let's start talking about the quality of this thing a little bit. I feel like that the quality is not good. With the Switch inside of it, moving it around, you can feel and hear the Switch is not very tightly secured into this controller. There's a little bit of wobble in there. I can also flex the controller a bit around the Switch, so there is some flex in here. And back on the point of the Switch not feeling very secure, I will say that even holding it upside down, which I was afraid of, it will stay in place. But it does feel like it would just fall out, but it does stay in place, so that's a little bit of peace of mind. And when you shake the controller, you can hear a lot of movement. So it sounds like either something isn't secured very well inside of the controller, or the internals are just not very well built, and maybe not very good materials are being used for this thing. See if I can get you to hear it real quick. Hopefully the microphone picked that up. As for the triggers, they are not analog. These are definitely electronic, digital triggers. So anybody looking for an analog trigger for their Switch, you're not going to find it here. And along with the triggers, pressing them, they do not feel very good. And they also have this weird thing where, like, if you press down in it, there's something going on in the middle of it. It's almost like a rocker or something. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a feature of the turbo mode or these controllers or whatnot, but I really don't like it. It really throws me off when I'm playing any kind of game. Also, the A, B, X, Y buttons are very hard to see what they actually are. There are letters inside of the buttons, but it's like a dark red color, and maybe it's just because I'm colorblind, but trying to see dark red inside of a very pitch black button, very hard to see what the buttons are, even in broad daylight. You really have to look, pay attention. There's reflection on the buttons, so that doesn't help trying to see what the buttons are. Also, I was a bit worried about the joysticks at first, because when I first unboxed it and hooked up my Switch to it, the left analog stick had like this weird sticking kind of thing going on where it felt like it would just get stuck over here and not really move, but after a few movements and testing it out, it kind of resolved itself. But it does lead me to worry about the longevity of the quality of these analog sticks, whether or not they're going to fail sooner rather than later or not. And also, it does have L3 and R3 functionality in the analog sticks, but the clicks feel a little off. They feel weird and cheap, so I don't really like the L3 and R3. Like, I don't even have to press the stick down fully and it feels like I'm clicking, so it almost feels like there's a double click going on. Now, unlike most third-party controllers for the Switch, this does have rumble functionality, which is pretty nice. I would say that the The rumble motors in here feel pretty strong. They get the job done. They're not HD rumble, so there's that. But I feel like they're not bad. Not my favorite. They don't feel good, like I said, like the HD rumble of the Joy-Cons or even the rumble of something like the Xbox One, or especially not the PS5 controller, the DualSense. As for battery drain with this, I will hopefully do a test on that. I will insert like a little B-roll of what's going on to tell you what battery life is actually like while using this controller versus using Joy-Cons. Just from initial testing, initial playing, tinkering, doing things with it, I feel like this controller really does drain the battery a bit faster than using Joy-Cons would. But like I said, I'm going to do a little test on it, see if that's actually the case, do a little timer, so throw in B-roll if I did that or not. But right off the bat, first impressions, it does seem like this controller does drain the battery a bit faster. Like at the beginning of this video, I was at 100%, and now I'm already at 97%, and I haven't even been playing any games. I've just been pressing buttons and moving stuff along, so it's a bit worrisome, but we'll see again from the test. As for the comfort, I tested this playing 2 games, and that was really all I needed. First game I tested with this controller was Splatoon 3, and man, did my hands hurt while playing that game with this controller. I don't think my hands are very big. As you can see, I have a wrist brace on here because I type at work all day, so I'm trying to prevent carpal tunnel. I do get a little hand crampy, but just playing with this controller definitely hurt my hands. And using the index finger for the trigger was also hurting my index finger. So that's a weird thing I haven't had an issue with any other controller I've used. So there's that. So I've gotten like fatigued from playing something like Vermintide with all the swinging that you have to do in that game. But otherwise, I've never had issues with my index finger. And using this trigger, especially because, like I said earlier, it has that weird rocking thing, my fingers started hurting, as well as, hand fatigue trying to use this controller in general. But one thing I do like about this controller, I do like the thickness of the grips. I feel like it does feel better in my hands in that aspect versus just using Joy-Cons, which are very thin and offer like no hand comfort, support, or anything, versus having something thick like this. It is nice, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, it does not prevent my hands from hurting while using this controller. Now, as for some of the functionality with this controller, one thing I do really like is at the bottom, it does have a charging pass-through that's USB-C, so you can play your games while still charging your Switch if you need to. I definitely need to, because this is the release day Switch. It's not even the red box, so battery life is terrible as it is. So it's nice to be able to still be able to charge my Switch while using this controller. And there are also cutouts on the back to make sure that ventilation is not impeded, so you don't have to worry as much about your Switch overheating while playing games. This controller can also switch between, see what I did there? Between being compatible with the OLED version of the Switch and this regular and red box version of the Switch. So it's pretty nice. It has some versatility for both owners. It will not fit the Switch Lite because the Switch Lite does not have detachable controllers. And it's a bit smaller than the OG Switch. So there's that. As for the button placement of the controller, I really do not like them at all. There's just something about them that seems off. I don't think I've ever used a controller before where the analog sticks are both on top and the D-pad and the ABXY buttons or whatever regular control buttons are at the bottom or below the thumbsticks. So that's really weird for me. Also, these buttons are very close to the thumbsticks. So while I'm playing games like Splatoon, I run into a problem with trying to press those buttons down below, or even while I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, trying to use my arts, trying to hit the correct button down below to use my skills or do whatever. It can be tough. I've pressed the wrong button more times than I've pressed the correct button. It might be just something that you get used to while using this thing, but yeah, I just don't like the button placement they could have gone with like a Steam Deck placement where the buttons are to the side of the joysticks, which I haven't had any problems with playing games with the Steam Deck. So I feel like this button placement is also better than what's on the Gamtoure Switch controller. And I also think it is because of the button placement that I did run into like hand cramping, hand hurting issues. Because these buttons, I just don't feel like they're natural, or it's just something I'm not used to, or something that I could get used to if I played this more often, but I don't like this controller enough to play it more often. And also for the regular like home button, plus, minus, whatever buttons, they feel very cheap. They're just kind of there. They are raised, so that's kind of nice, but they're very closely packed together, which can lead to accidental presses for other buttons that you didn't mean to press, or searching for them or whatever. I just don't really like them. I did not test the auto fire functionality of the controller because I didn't really care to. For one, I didn't like the controller enough to want to keep playing to test the turbo feature because my hands were hurting. And two, when I was playing Splatoon 3, I didn't want to risk being banned. And three, the directions, like I said, I didn't realize the paper that came in a box were the directions on how to use the turbo function. I kind of looked them over, but like I said, I didn't really care enough to want to try it, so I didn't implement them. And yeah, there's that. At least it comes with instructions on how to use it. They're not great instructions still, but they're instructions nonetheless. But all in all, I really don't like this controller. I really don't think you should buy it. 40 bucks seems like a pretty steep price. So as a kind of review within a review, I haven't touched the Switch I haven't touched a Switch like this in a while with just the Joy-Cons. But anyways, what I would highly suggest over getting that Gamtoure Switch controller is to get something like this. This is the Skull & Co. grip that you can get for your Switch. And mine came with a case. I don't have my case with me at the moment, but it comes with a carrying case that you can put your Switch and the control grip in with. And it also has different hand grip options that you can choose. I believe it came with 3. I'd have to kind of double check that, but I believe you get 3 in total options that you can use as a grip to fit different kinds of hands and different kinds of play styles. And I just feel like this is a much better experience than using this because you at least still get your HD rumble. I think you'll get better battery life because of the Joy-Cons in general. And the Joy-Cons just are a better quality than that thing. Despite getting Joy-Con drift and you still do have the digital triggers, you at least get nice feeling triggers and nice feeling analog sticks. Just everything is nicer. Plus, you still got your ventilation system and your direct connection to the USB-C port to charge your Switch while you're playing games. So I much prefer this over this. But if you're still interested in this, I'll leave a link to it down below. If you're interested in this grip, I'll also leave a link to this down below for you. And it is an Amazon affiliate link. It won't cost you anything extra to go through that link. It'll just provide me a little bit of a kickback. Yeah, that's my review for this thing. I'm about to box it up and send it back and get a refund because I really don't like this thing. Ugh.